Hello, dear readers. My name is Caitlin Legaspi, indie author of the young adult urban fantasy series Cardholders, and welcome back to my channel. Today is a bit of a get to know me video, as I will be sharing my self-published author journey, how I got here. So without further ado, let's get into it. I wrote my first ever story when I was in first or second grade, and this passion of mine turned on and off until I was in late elementary, early middle school. Why? Well, I discovered the Nick.com message boards. Fans of Nickelodeon, if you're about my age, you will remember that the channel's website had the message boards, a kid-friendly forum containing topics including Nick.com shows and beyond. And this is where my consistent writing journey began, not with an original story, but with fanfiction, more specifically, Power Rangers Samurai fanfiction. I'm proud of it, damn it! If you write fanfiction and people say you're not a writer, they're wrong. Let me tell you, on a brief side note, I have read some fanfiction that was better than actual published books I've read, so some of y'all out there are really talented. But after finishing this fanfic, I went on to write others, namely a part 2 to the Power Ranger Samurai fanfic, as well as an unfinished Dragon Ball Z story. One day, I decided to explore a bit more of the message boards, dive into the deep end, so to speak, and that's how I stumbled upon the forum, dedicated fully to original stories written by kids my age. And I just thought that it was so cool that kids as young as me were writing their own original stuff. And I was so excited and I just wanted to join in too. And so I did. And at this moment in time, the original concept of the Dark Irregular trilogy was born. The original Dark Irregular was not titled Dark Irregular, and it definitely was not the story it is today. Long story short, it was definitely more Harry Potter-esque, with wands that had jewels on the very tips shaped into specific symbols that represented its holder in some way. I never got past a certain scene in this story, no matter how many times I rewrote the beginning, so I decided to scrap it in its entirety and start all over again. And that is how today's Dark Irregular came to be, with Kana as its main character and the kingdom of Silenia at its heart. Fun fact, Dark Irregular was only a stand-in title until I could think of a better one to replace it. I clearly never did. At this time, I had a best friend, let's call him A. I told A everything about my writing, showed him my writing, so to speak, and it's because of him that I started truly thinking about becoming a writer, because he asked me this following question: do you think you're going to publish it? I'd never thought about it up until that point, and I didn't think getting published at my age was possible. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized how much I enjoyed writing, and the more I loved the idea that I could someday become a full-time writer. And well, with the help of my school's middle school literature teacher and librarian, whom I will call Mrs. P and Miss O, respectively, I finished Dark Irregular, and they helped me find a freelance editor, not a writer, who edited its rough draft in its entirety. Now, it took me 2 to 3 years to write the entire trilogy, the story that we have today at the very moment. Between 7th and 8th grade, I started it and finished it at the end of my first year of high school. And as I mentioned in my previous video, I started writing Cardholders right after. At this point in time, I would have been 15 years old, and it was around this time that I started reaching out to both agents and publishers to try and publish my story. I started searching for agents and publishers to apply to in about freshman year of high school, I believe, and to make a long story short, I got rejection after rejection after rejection. It was around this time that my dad heard an advertisement on the radio talking about Page Publishing, a vanity press that helped authors publish their stories into full-fledged books for a fee. I didn't know this at the time, but this probably wasn't the way to go. The fee was not cheap. I did go this route because I was but a mere baby when it came to publishing, even with the research I did do, and I had the full support of my parents at the time. Not to mention, I got my own dedicated contact at the company that I could follow up with throughout the entire publishing process, including editing and creating the cover. My experience with them was really good. They were very responsive, but it was an overall pleasant experience. And then, after months of going through edits and creating book covers, Dark Irregular was finally published when I was 16 years old. And boy, did I not want to share it. Listen, self-confidence was not something I had in high school. And right now in my adult life, I was really shy, to say the least. Like, I remember my first ever book event where I sold Dark Irregular for the first time. It was one of those things where I was like, please buy my book. And at the same time, I would be like, don't look at me. Don't make eye contact with me. I don't want to talk to you. It was difficult for me to really put myself out there. Not to mention, I didn't know a thing about marketing and had no social media whatsoever. Also, I went to an international baccalaureate school, or IB for short. And if you know, the curriculum was intense and I felt like I couldn't focus on much outside of school. So I went through the rest of my high school years not really doing much in terms of publishing, but still writing about a story a year. Then came high school graduation and finally college, where I started to really kick things into gear. In 2018, I began my university life at the University of Florida in Gainesville, which isn't huge news. I'm sure if you looked me up, you would find pictures of me on campus. It wasn't until summer between my freshman and sophomore year of high school that I thought about publishing again. What triggered the thought? Well, one of my biggest supporters since the beginning of my writing journey passed away. Without getting too deep into it, because I don't want to reveal too much of my personal life, I had an aunt on my dad's side in the Philippines who supported my writing without much thought. She found an artist for me who did a poster of Kana and one of my other main characters, and she read each and every one of my rough drafts whenever I completed one. She believed in me from the very beginning, and this sweet soul passed away in the summer of 2019. Her death hit me really hard. She was my confidant, my main supporter outside of my parents, and she was my loudest cheerleader, and all of a sudden she was just gone. When it all sunk in, I used that grief as energy to plan republishing Dark Irregular, as my contract with Page Publishing had been over for a while at that point. And boy, did I plan a bunch. While I was in the Philippines, I was able to find the artist who currently creates all the art for my book covers, and I spent over half of the roughly 13-hour flight back to the States creating and editing a timeline for republishing Dark Irregular and publishing the rest of the trilogy. I did a lot of research, specifically into self-publishing. So when I got back to the US, it was all hands on deck. I had my timeline, I had my deadlines, I had an artist who was absolutely talented and still is, Lance, hello, and I was raring to go. I made my first ever Instagram account and I began posting about my works, sharing a few snippets, and doing my best to be positive on my account. I was also my own editor. Don't do that if you can help it. I decided on Draft to Digital to self-publish my works through, and my works are still there to this day. And by the way, it's been an amazing experience ever since then. Their customer service is highly recommend. Then on November 1st, 2019, roughly 4 to 5 months after I decided to be self-published, Dark Irregular came into the world once again, with White Blossom releasing on January 20th, 2020, and Grey Heart on May 1st in the same year. And the rest is history. And that is the story of how I became a self-published author. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, don't forget to like and subscribe, and be sure to hit that bell for notifications of future videos. Also, if you'd like to check out my card holder series, my website will be one of the links in the description down below. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be sure to see you all in the next chapter. Bye!